Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is my incredible co-host, Donovan. And today we have a very special guest. Aunia Kahn is a multifaceted creative entrepreneur and a globally awarded, collected, and exhibited artist, photographer, graphic web designer at Exilium House Design, the host of the Create and Inspire podcast, a published author, as well as a teacher and inspirational speaker. Please welcome Aunia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Great. So you have accomplished quite a lot in your life. Would you like to tell us a little about your story and your journey into all the things that you do?
Yeah, of course. Of course. So my story is a little different and strange. I didn't expect to be an artist. This is not the world that I expected I would be in. But things in my life kind of shifted. And so when I was younger, in my teenage years, I started to have a lot of health issues, and I wanted to go to school to be a therapist. And I was unable to do so because I had a lot of health challenges. And during that time, I was told it was all in my head. And so that went on for almost 20 years of dealing with that. And so art kind of became a salvation place for me, a place where I could deal with things that were going on, because there wasn't any acknowledgement. There wasn't any understanding. There wasn't any real support from even really people around me. Because when you go to a doctor regularly and they're like, listen, like like, we're thinking there's something wrong. It's like, yeah, there may actually be. And that's totally fine, because mental health is an important thing and shouldn't be made fun of either. However, I know that there was something physical in association with that. And, people in your life start to kind of feel like, the boy who cried wolf, like, okay, we've had these tests. Okay, we've seen this stuff. No one is finding anything. So apparently you're neurotic. So art became this salvation place. I started just really expressing myself through different types of photo manipulation and photography and writing. And I'd always been creative. So this isn't like a far cry from something that I had already really been into when I was younger. I just really disassociated from it and went into a more conventional type of thought, because my family was like, yeah, no, you can't be an artist. Like, you need to do something that can support your family. And so I didn't even consider the option that art or creativity could even be the foundation of a career. And so that's just kind of the root of where it all started, and kind of why I got into publishing and running a gallery and doing podcasts and the whole bunch of things that I've done. Because when you're stuck at home and you aren't able to function, I'm a very driven person. So I couldn't just sit there. So I took in a lot of books, and I did a lot of art, and I did everything that I could do to try to make myself feel relevant in the world. And thank goodness for the internet at that point, because it really helped the feeling of isolation. It really helped me be able to get my artwork out there, get it into galleries, connect with magazines, connect with people like you. It's been a big doorway to me, like a lot of people are experiencing with COVID right now, this whole lock-in. And thank goodness we have Zoom and all this stuff. I was dealing with this 20 years ago, and just thankful for the small steps of being able to connect with the world around me.
Yeah. So I think I just want to highlight, I'm sure we're going to go into all kinds of other topics, but I really wanted to highlight one piece of your story that I think is really important, which is that even if, there are people, and I know a couple people who experience these symptoms of things like some form of illness, and then go to the doctor and have a hard time getting a pinpointed diagnosis from a physical ailment. I think some people take that as like, oh, if we can't find the physical thing, then it's fake, or it's you're not experiencing that. But I wanted to really highlight that maybe not everyone knows you genuinely experience whatever the symptoms are. Like, that's an actual part of the experience, whether or not a doctor is able to pinpoint what is causing it. And even if it is coming from a mental place, like there's
Absolutely.
still some part of your brain that's causing the actual, symptoms. So it's not this sort of like faking thing that I feel like, people at the surface level of this sort of discussion kind of experience sometimes. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, I do have actual questions and things that I want to know. I just really wanted to hone in on that because I think it's important.
It is very important. I just want to say it is very important. And I think even if it is what they would call psychosomatic or whatever, it's a real experience for a human being, whether or not there's a root cause or maybe it's trauma that's going on in their life that's then physical elements are being shown through because that's how they're processing. It should be taken very seriously. And I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, because if you're having nausea or something, it's not that you're saying you have nausea when you don't, it's that you have nausea and they can't quite figure out what the root is. And I don't know, I just feel like it's so important to highlight. But on to the question bit, which is I kind of wanted to get into a little bit more around your journey through sort of this illness piece and then this creativity piece. So I'm curious just to start out with what sort of avenues you were able to find, because it sounded like you had some limitations from the illness you were facing. And I'm just curious, like what methods you used to figure out what kinds of art you were able to do.
That's a great question. So I was very limited, and that is correct. My disease specifically, a large part of it is being allergic to pretty much everything. So it limited me from doing a lot of things. And then I also suffered from agoraphobia because I was having these allergic reactions or panic attacks, because they really do like coexist. Like you have an allergic reaction, your body goes into panic. You have a panic attack, and if you have this disease, you can have an allergic reaction. So there's this circular situation that occurs. And so I was unable to really go out a lot because I would find when I would get into a car that I would end up having more issues, or if I went places, I was obviously being affected by the environment. So I really locked in a lot. And one thing that got me into it is really just being on the internet and seeing these other people being creative and then going like, well, maybe I could do that. Like maybe I need something to do. Maybe that's something I can do and it would be fun. Like I really feel it's important to create a sense of joy in our lives, right? A sense of like, even if something is challenging or even if you're going through a right time, how often can you reach for something joyful, even if it's minuscule, because that can help rebalance. And I've always kind of felt that part of my life. Like even when things are really bad, I'm like, how do I reach for joy? And that was joyful, like seeing art. And I was like, well, I can do that. I've always loved to do that. And I was on DeviantArt and like these other places, just kind of doing the thing. And slowly it shifted because I went out of the house and I went to this little park and they were having a tiny festival there. And it was mostly kids. And I sat down at this picnic table. And they were doing watercolor. And I thought, oh, I think I can because it was pencil. And I thought, well, maybe I can do that because I'm allergic to almost all mediums. Not so much now, that shifted recently, but for the last 15 years, I haven't been able to touch watercolor, colored pencil, acrylic. I've had to be digital because of my severe allergies. So at that point, this gentleman walks up to me and says, hey, can I take your picture? And of course, I'm like super uncomfortable. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, why? And he's like, well, I work for the local newspaper and I just want to, take a picture of you with these kids. And I was like, okay, it didn't seem as like predatory because you just don't know. Some guy just walks up to you like, can I take your photo? You're like, I'm pretty sure that's a no. This is back in 2005. And we exchanged numbers, and later on, we created a long-standing friendship. His name is Roger, and I was doing music at the time. I want to throw back then. I was doing music, and I was also doing graphic and web design prior to the art thing. So it's one of the things I had kind of jumped into just for fun again. And I needed a photo for a calendar I was going to be in because I was in this band, and it was just myself. The music was just me. It's like a female Nine Inch Nails. I was creating, my own synth lines, my own drum lines, doing all the production on my own. And I needed something for a goth calendar at the time. And so I was like, called him up and we just became good friends. And he saw some of the art I was doing because it was very private. And it was very much like a personal journal, like, you know, because I dealt a lot with my illness as well as my very adverse childhood situations that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you know, have you thought about putting this into a gallery? And I'm like, pretty sure that's also a no. Like, you know, like, like think about taking a, you know, your journal of your most private things and saying, hey, I'm going to put it up on a wall. And I was like, I don't think so. But then I thought about it and thought, well, I've always wanted to help people. Like that is like intrinsically in me. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. This help, the need for helping others is there. And I said, well, you never know. Let's give it a try. And so I did. And after that, my career just, you know, continued to go on. But he was really a big connection into the gallery world. And then from the graphic and web design stance, because that's the job that I do along with art that actually pays my bills independently over the last 20 years, came from a friend donating a computer to me and just said, here's some programs. Maybe you want to play with them. And now I'm sitting here with my own business, you know, 20 years later. So really connections, if you want to know the answer, it's really connections.
Yeah, no, that's a super inspirational story because, you know, what I was hearing out of it, like the thing that made a difference, even though you were kind of hesitant with meeting this random stranger and then also hesitant to put your art in a gallery, you know, you had that fear and hesitation, but you decided to step out of it and go for it. And it opened up so many possibilities for your life and you were able to make a career out of it. And I think that is really profound and inspirational for people to know, like, yeah, when you step outside of your comfort zone, because you don't know what's going to happen next. It could have been a dead end connection. You never know. That's actually how Donovan and I met. We were just like random connections on LinkedIn and we didn't know each other, but then we connected and we became friends and then we created a podcast together. So
I love that.
So,
you just never know.
Yeah, you really never know. And the thing that you touched on earlier that I did want to comment on was the whole thing about, you know, allergies or panic attacks manifesting out of, like, even though there wasn't, like, they couldn't figure out the root cause or really explore that, it is so real. I see that so many times. And the thing that you touched on that I didn't want to step over was that, you know, trauma and past childhood wounds dramatically manifest in these physical types of symptoms. And I see that a lot. And you know, you can't blame the doctor because they don't know how to deal with the trauma or even like look at it. But it's just like something people should consider exploring if they've tried everything else and they haven't really delved into that and they knew they had some childhood stuff they probably should address. Maybe that's someone, something worth exploring who's an expert in like that trauma field, who can do it like safely. Because, you know, you want to unravel the layers in a way where you can feel safe. But I just wanted to emphasize that point because I think that's a really important point for our viewers in case they're in a similar situation as you, where they have, you know, health concerns, they don't know what's causing it. That's another factor to look at.
Oh, it's a big factor. When I lecture at colleges and universities and work with people on art and trauma, it is something that is like very prevalent and understood. It's like there are so many people who have had horrible things go on as a child. And the ACEs score, if people don't know about that, they should check their ACEs score, which basically takes your childhood trauma and it gives you a score to match how easily you're going to have physical ailments based on the adversity that you've experienced. And that ACEs score can help you, like you're saying, kind of be able to bring that to a doctor and say, listen, like, this is all the stuff I've dealt with. This can affect my genes. This can affect my immune system. All of these things actually affected my development of who I am as an adult. And then this can help them because doctors, and I know you know this, I think Western medicine is changing, but the whole body perspective, not just looking at symptoms, but it's like, well, what are you eating? What are you drinking? How are you sleeping? What are your relationships like? You know, how is your work? You know, have you had past traumas and have you dealt with them? And if you have not, how can we get you help in the safest way possible? Plus, there's so many other things in trauma that people don't know, that we don't have to just go to talk therapy. There's somatic therapy. There's EMDR therapy. there's art therapy. There's so many ways that we are learning to process trauma in the world of psychology that has nothing to do with harming ourselves by going over the traumas again in our heads.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
I'm just passionate about that. Really, it's important. It's important.
No, I feel you, because as a naturopathic doctor, that's exactly what I look at, like their whole life, their relationship, what they put in their bodies, their past trauma. It's like all feeding into the picture. We got to look at all these various components to really help people heal. So as I'd be curious, it sounds like you've been on this healing journey for a while. Like what are the things that kind of, or any like breakthrough moments for you on that journey that you'd like to share about? Yeah.
So I have been somebody who's tried a lot of different things based in the fact that I like research and I don't like to give up. So it tells me that it's in my head and I'm like, I know it's not. I feel beat down and absolutely, I'm not just like going to rise above things, because I believe in like, I experienced that feeling and it sucks, but I can also get back up. Really for me, it's that ability to have autonomy in my body and recognize that my experiences are my own, and my partner, my family, my doctor will not understand those experiences, and to not devalue that. If this is how I feel, then I own that, and I find a way to work through that, as well as being able to create expressively emotional turmoil. I've always made this joke when I lecture at college and universities, like we would have less shootings and postal stuff, like all the crazy stuff that not postal stuff, but they always talk about postal shootings because they're under so much stress. We would have less of those violent situations if people were able to process, and we were open to dark thoughts, expressing ourselves with dark art, all of these things. I mean, there's a level, of course, with violence in movies and other things that, of course, they can tip to the line of being unhealthy. But there's also a positive expression of the darker side of ourselves that I think it's important to be able to do, as well as being able to look at my illness and be willing to accept what it is, where I'm at, be willing to live in that pit of despair, go there, live there for a minute, but know that I can resurface, and then have a toolbox, a very large toolbox of things that changes per the parts of my life. Maybe right now these tools are needed, and maybe there's a death in my family, and now I need to use these other tools. I think a lot of times people are given tools and it's like, okay, these are the fundamental things that you need to do. And it's like, no, we are ebbing and flowing. Our entire body is this ebb and flow. And we have to feel what's in right. What do we need right now? What does it help us do right now? And then of course, just like the traditional stuff. I've been in therapy on and off since I was 14 years old. I got into therapy behind my family's back in high school. And I just, I got in with a therapist there, and he really helped me navigate I had a suicide of a friend in high school. I was obviously dealing with challenges with my family. And I reached out to him in the last couple of years to let him know, like, he really changed my life. Like I myself attempted suicide in high school. And if he wasn't there, I really don't know if I would be here today. So, having that kind of resource, general therapeutic resources, knowing that with my illness, I have doctors that are, behind me. And then things like I do EMDR. I love EMDR. I think somatic things like, if you are feeling a certain way, we often just kind of crouch in and do those emotions. Like, I'm feeling angry. Well, they talk about polar bears, right? How polar bears deal with trauma is they shake it off. They just shake it off. And so they're trying to bring that into modern day help with human beings. Like, you can shake it off and you can do this. So really for me, it's just having all these tools. And of course, in this session that we're talking right now, I'm not going to be able to tell all the things, but there's a lot. There's so many things out there. And now that we have the internet, we have all of these podcasts, We have so many resources that can fit to us rather than 10, 20 years ago, there was this formula and these are the things that are available. It's like, no, we can curate our own healing approach and have more control over that now. And knowing that you can, it's important.
Yeah, there was a couple things that resonated with me as you were talking there. One of them that really stood out is a talk, and we've talked about this a couple times before, but kind of having space to be in your emotions, right? And your feelings and your thoughts and explore them in a way instead of pushing back against them. And, it goes to, I'll use aggression instead, but, having the space to explore like aggressive thoughts and feelings, maybe not making a plan, like that's terrible. Like maybe not a way to make execute violence, but having the space to actually like make space for those thoughts and feelings and say like, oh, I feel like this right now. And this, maybe this is because of this, or, explore around in those ways, I think is really important. And especially around, like grief or suicidality or depression or some of these other feelings. I think that's extremely important for people to understand, because the default, again, or like this surface level that is often talked about, is to just like push that away and crush it down as far as you possibly can, which means at some point it's going to come back with a fury.
That's right.
So I thought that was a really important point. And another thing, like one of my core philosophies around any of this like personal improvement type of stuff, well-being things, is basically being flexible with the tools that you end up using and trying, because there's not going to be one tool set that works for anyone. Like you were saying, it's about kind of going through all these different processes and picking out the different ones that, oh, this one works. This one seems to be doing something. This one seems to be doing something for me in these certain circumstances, like you were saying, depending on where you're at, where your ebb and flow is, what's going on in your life. And I've just found that to be very true for myself as well. As I pick out tools from various podcasts and the internet and other resources that I consume, I end up with this tool set that allows me to, with more and more situations.
I love what you said. Thank you for saying that. I think it's really important. I agree.
So there's another thing, another thread that I wanted to open up, which is, I imagine, and I could be completely wrong, but it sounded like maybe there were some energy fluctuations that went along with some of the illness things that you were feeling or dealing with. And I'd be curious how you kind of managed, because you said there was this piece of like driven, wanting to get a lot of stuff done, and another piece of not feeling good. So I'd be curious what you did to kind of balance those two things out.
That's a great question. And the reason why that's a great question is because when you are a driven individual and you are put a roadblock in front of you, it's really frustrating. And it creates, what I've noticed a lot with people who have chronic illness, is this need to, I feel good enough and I'm going to cram everything in there. I'm going to try to do everything I can. And then really it's counterintuitive, because you're running your body into the ground and then you have to repair. And so I spent a lot of time doing that, quite a lot. I'm much better about it now. I mean, my life has shifted quite a bit, but I would, like opening a gallery. I was like, this is my dream. And when I got on a feeding tube formula, I wasn't diagnosed, but it actually gave my body nutrition for the first time. I got a new renewal sense of energy. And I was like, I want to do this. I don't know if I'm going to live. I've always wanted to do this. And then I would, do it for a few months. Things would happen. I would burn out. I'd have to close, move locations. I would try it again. And I wasn't able to keep it going for a long period of time, because I didn't have that type of long-term resilience because of this back and forth situation. So it's really hard to manage that kind of energy. And I think it is even more like exacerbated by the fact that I lost a period of time. So I lost like almost 20 years of my life. So once I got diagnosed a few years ago, I got on medication and like my whole world opened up. Then it was like gangbusters, because not only was I chasing a clock in my daily life, right? Like, okay, I feel sick this day. I don't feel that bad this day. I'm going to do a ton of stuff. This, not just that, but now I'm going, I lost 20 years of my life. I have so much to make up for. So then that's also compressing that. And it's an ongoing battle for me. It's something where I've had to really learn to tune in and go, the engine is going, and now the engine is starting to burn out. And before that engine gets to a place of just being destroyed and having to repair, then I stop. Because what happens is in the long term, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, is the more that you don't have your engine rev to the point of it failing, and then you have to jump it again and restart it. If you're able to stop that before it happens, your engine doesn't get continually worn down. And when you have times of positive energy, productive energy, you can use it better and you have more of it. It's not such a, an up and down extreme situation. It's more this. So your downs aren't as down. Your highs might not be as high, but that's also where it's a better place to be. So that's a really great question, and is something I do struggle with on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we all to some degree have that I know I can relate to that 100%, because I also am someone that's like a go-getter and doing so many things, and like there's never enough time. I got all these things to do, but like this week was a really jam-packed week, and I start to feel like, oh, I'm starting to feel depleted and run down. And kind of like you, I've had to like learn this lesson multiple times over, instead of like keep pushing, even though I'm tired, to be like, okay, next week I'm going to actually block out times to like not do anything and rest and recover, so I'm not so burnt out, because I know if I keep going at this pace, because I've done it before, it's just like I can't really be that effective at life in general. So it's a life lesson I too had to discover many times over, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Totally. I think a lot of people do. I really do think it's a very common, especially in Western culture. If you look at other cultures, they do take rests and naps, and you're not looked at as a bad person, and
Right.
In Western culture, it's like, you must work 7 days a week, 50 hours a week. And if you're not doing that, then you're lazy. And it's like, well, that's not actually healthy. I hope that we can kind of shift. I think, what is it? France has like 4-day work weeks or something. I don't know.
Right.
But wherever it is, anybody who has 4-day work weeks is great.
I know. They know what they're doing. Yeah. I try to get away with like, no, I'm lucky if I get like 1 day off.
Right?
Because I'm like, my weekends are really to catch up on all the things I didn't get to in the week.
Sure.
So it's like, where do I need to factor in rest time a little bit more? Like Italians, they take what, like a 2 or 3 hour lunch?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then also doing what you love also is challenging too. Like if you're doing something you love, it's like, well, I'm painting this, but am I really working or am I playing? I'm not quite sure,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's another question that I had, which is kind of another jump away from what we were just talking about. But I'm curious, it sounds like there was quite a period where you were experiencing these symptoms, didn't have a diagnosis or anything to pin it on, and then you found something that's been working for you.
Yeah.
I would be curious what advice you have for others who are sort of on the same journey, but not at the point of finding what works. Because like I said, I know a couple people who have these sort of mysterious symptoms just following them around with no real diagnosis, no real way to know what to do, experiencing some of the same things you talked about, where people are not giving them, not validating that the experience is real or exists, or that they're causing it somehow intentionally. So I would just be curious, what are some of the thoughts or ideas you have around that for other people on that journey?
So that's a good question as well. All these are really great questions. You guys have good questions. Everybody's journey is going to be different. And we all know that. But one of the things that I think is very important, and sometimes it's hard to harness for people, is that ability to fall down 7 times, get up 8, like being able to be resilient, be able to come back, being able to be willing to be knocked down, be told no, be told you're crazy, and just be willing to like take that and then move into another place and go, okay, that's the door that's closed, but there may be someone else who can help me. And of course, over 20, 18 plus years of, my life having doors closed in my face. I mean, at that point, it's kind of like, what's the point, right? Mm-hmm. But you have one life to live. You have one, that's it. That's all you get. And it's exhausting. Like, I'm going to be very clear. Like, I would not say that that's not an exhausting process, that it's an easy process to do, because it sucks badly. It sucks. It's painful. It's just so full of exhaustion, but try to take care of yourself, try to get rest, try to believe in yourself. Like, know that what you're, kind of like we said earlier, what you are experiencing is real to you. The end. No one else has to understand it. No one else has to feel it. I just realized I have paint on my hand as we're doing this. This is real. Okay.
That is real.
It's so hard to want to say that, because when I think of, I think of my life and thinking about all the times where I got knocked down, it's just like crying and just being frustrated and feeling, it's starting to question yourself. Mm-hmm. Maybe I am crazy. At one point I was very open with one of my doctors when I went in to get a feeding tube. I was like, if I'm crazy, maybe I am crazy. I'm self-aware enough to be okay to ask if maybe you are right. Like being able to question that, and also be able to be introspective into yourself. Like, okay, if there are people who are questioning certain things, maybe there is something that you are missing because you're so focused on, maybe your symptoms. Maybe there is something that you are overlooking because you're so focused on the symptoms that you're not hearing something that you may need to be, that may need to be heard, as well as seeking alternatives. There's so many alternatives to any sort of help. I mean, even just talking to a friend, having a good quality friendship, family member, someone who can be there for you, securing your essential needs is really important. Getting the answers is great. Sometimes the answers don't do anything. They don't change much. Sometimes they do, but making sure that you have a foundation of supportive people that are there for you, and you continue to believe in yourself and try to get back up when you can. Take some downtime, rest. If you're not willing to fight and go look for a while, that's okay too. Take some time to rest. Then when you're ready, get back up again. Your journey is on your timeline. People that have health issues, people who have dealt with loss, there's all these expectations from the world. You should be over it by now. You should be this, It's like, no, it's on your own time, your own time frame. Don't pressure yourself. You'll get where you need to go. It's your journey.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I resonate with all of that. It's an ongoing journey, and it's about, getting up after not just 2 or 3 knockdowns. Sometimes it's 7 or 10 or 50. Who knows? It takes something, but as long as you take care of yourself, you can get through it. What's the point of giving up if you're not really living at that point? So I totally resonate with all of that, and I appreciate everything that you shared and your contribution to our Happy Talks show. Was there anything you'd like to plug before we wrap up today?
No, I'm good. Unless people want to visit my website to check out my art, that would probably be it. Or I'm at Instagram and YouTube and things like that. So
awesome. Yes. For anyone who wants to check out Aunia's art, check out her website. The links will be in the description below. Thank you so much for being on our show. It's been a pleasure to have you.
You too. It was a great conversation. Thank you for providing this for people to listen to. It's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. Awesome.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.